Hi guys, welcome back to Just Talking, where I talk at you and you sometimes listen. Today we're discussing whether or not the Nickelodeon Land section of Blackpool Pleasure Beach will be staying for very much longer, and this comes after the overwhelming support and views I've got from my past videos on the park. And if you'd like to see this content to keep flowing, then make sure to like, comment or subscribe, or do all three if you want. And since summer's out, it's a perfect opportunity to discuss the family areas of the park and how it might change in the future. So, what is Nickelodeon Land? It opened on 4th of May 2011, and it was basically an IP agreement between Nickelodeon and Blackpool Pleasure Beach that was about 10 years of an agreement, and it would feature rides themed around the characters as well as merchandise, and this comes with a large branded shop which features a lot of the familiar characters and their merchandising, such as SpongeBob, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Paw Patrol, Dora, and Fairly Odd Parents, which does feature sort of teddies, clothing, accessories, toys, and very much more from the central company, Nickelodeon. It does also feature 12 staple rides, some of them repurposed from the old Beaver Creek, which I'll discuss later. And it has things such as the two wooden roller coasters, Nickelodeon Streak and Blue Flyer. It features a Fairly Odd Parents taxi spin, the Avatar Airbender ride, Rugrats Sauce River Adventure, and also the Krusty Krab Order Up, just to name a few. And since it opened in 2011, it's increased the footfall of the park, especially with families, and now features a lot of deals with summer holidays and weekends when you come back to school for kids visiting the park. So that is the under 12 age range, and it reduces the price for kids to about £15. But that really only occasionally happens. But this area allows kids to meet and greet their favourite characters, take pictures with them, sometimes watch shows, and also eat at the Big Pizza restaurant, which is on the side of the old Space Invader building, which is no longer inhabited by a ride, which I'll get into in a minute. And this just allows people to go out of the area for a bit and have a lovely pizza because the food is really nice there, and then come back in. Also, there are some sort of amusement park themed um, like sort of games and arcades and things for people to enjoy, and really it's not fully themed, it's not specific to a character, even though there are 3 or 4 rides themed around SpongeBob, which includes the Krusty Krab Order Up, which is a small children appropriate drop tower, and it really does tie the whole place in together. It's a staple of the park, and people come with the knowledge that Nickelodeon does take its home in there, and it is, I believe, the only park in the UK that has an affiliate with Nickelodeon. And it really is a great area for all age groups because Avatar is there, and it is a relatively thrilling spinning top ride which runs along a track and spins as it moves, which is for tweens and teens that enjoy the popular anime made by Nickelodeon. And for younger kids, you do also have the Big Top Circus ride as well, which is basically a smaller, tamer version of the taxi spin ride. And it's really introduced a great brand deal to the park and has got them a lot of money. But what is Beaver Creek? This area was really popular in like the 70s and 80s and was a predecessor to Nickelodeon Land. There's no specifics on when it opened because the history of it is very vague, and it featured a lot of flat rides and also fairy tale and storybook characters, including Gulliver, who held up the original monorail track. The track that he did use to hold up, I believe, is actually still there because it does have some central wires to the park flowing along the track. But it included multiple flat rides, a dark ride based on fairy tales, and a park in the centre. And it did still have the Nickelodeon Streak ride, which was named Roller Coaster and opened in around the 1930s. So it was definitely here before Beaver Creek, and it featured the 2 staple characters, Bradley and Bella Beaver, I believe, is their names. And that you can still find their small little woodland area, which is a sort of education section of the park, but no one knows if it's going to come back at this point. It is simply a rumour. But here you can see Gulliver standing tall, as well as a dark ride which is along this section. It did also include some arcade sort of toy grabbers, and also the, I believe, Thompson Carousel, which is now up near the big one. and some of the rides have been moved, as well as the Rugrat Lost River ride, which is a log flume, did used to actually be in this section too, and they simply rethemed that to fit the new Nickelodeon IP. And of course, it was mainly flat rides. It did still have the two staple wooden roller coasters, but it did, of course, have that dark ride, which, of course, Nickelodeon Land does not have. It instead has Dora's World Voyage. So, will it make a return in 2022? On Twitter, we have seen a lot of evidence that it might be making a return in some way, shape, or form, whether that's refurbishing the current area for Bradley and Bella Beaver, or if it means that they might just make more regular appearances, they might get their own show or branding, merchandise. We really do not know at this point, but based on Amanda Thompson's tweets and also tweets made by the Pleasure Beach, there is evidence for this, such as Bradley and Bella Beaver hit the shops at Blackpool Pleasure Beach hunting for merchandise. Of course, they have really made their return as mascots in this year for the 125th season, which might just be for nostalgia. I think that the area would probably bring a lot of nostalgic people, but they really hadn't made much of an appearance, and it was kind of a dead sort of brand of the park, and Funshine has made his return, possibly part for nostalgia, but these characters have really become a new staple of the park and have really returned, and on opening day you could see them, you could meet them, and they now do roam the park at regular intervals. Furthermore, Amanda Thompson said, Bradley Beaver at Blackpool Pleasure Beach with Tuesday. We may bring him back someday soon. Watch this space. And I believe this picture is her with Bradley Beaver, but I'm not all too sure. But I think that she does want to bring it back. I do trust her in her decision for this if she does decide to cancel the IP, because of course in a brand deal with a theme park, whichever company has decided to, start a deal or a affiliate sponsorship with a park has control over the area that they either are being paid for or paying for. And of course, if they do decide to cancel this a decade after, well, I do trust that Amanda Thompson will theme this well. I do believe her management is actually quite good. A lot of people won't agree with me on saying that, and I know a lot of people aren't too fond, but with what she did with Icon and how she's maintained the park and updated things like the ghost train and river caves and kept all of those running, but also modernising the park to some extent, whilst also maintaining the history, I do believe that she can do it in a really good and effective way. And I'm not too fussed about Nickelodeon Land leaving because it's not heavily themed. And I do think that watching this space, I think that she is hinting that there might be a change. They will bring him back because he did used to have his own area. That was nothing else was really linked to Bradley Beaver apart from Beaver Creek. That was his area. So bringing him back would mean bringing back everything to do with him. And because that was his identity. Beaver Creek was his home in this sort of storybook fantasy land that was fun for families and kids. So I do believe that that is what is being implied. So should it return? Well, you've got to think about how that would spread out the people in the park, because of course you don't saturate queues like this. I believe this is quite early on in Infusion's lifespan, but I do think that bringing back Beaver Creek would spread people out a bit more because Nickelodeon Land doesn't draw adults back in. I feel like the nostalgia could be a really killer factor of the area that adults would want to go back to see if it had that charm and relive childhood memories. And I think with how many things were in Beaver Creek and how it was set up, if they did bring back a dark ride, and I think Amanda Thompson knows how to do a dark ride. I do really like Thrill-O-Matic, which is themed on Wallace and Gromit. I do definitely think that she could bring that back, and I think it would be executed well and with charm, and also with a timeless sort of atmosphere and vibe to it. And I think that a lot of adults would be more drawn to it as well as kids, because if kids need a brand to be attracted to something, then making an area for families is completely futile, because not only will that eventually make you lose money and eventually get into some sort of disagreement, but it just means that kids are never going to be satisfied. It's like with Alton Towers and CBeebies Land. I'm not a fan of it, and kids like it. And I thought the Storybook Land was incredible, and I think that people moving away from teaching about stories and engagement because they're going to get more footfall from a brand is just sad. It just shows the futility of parks for younger people, and eventually it will get to a point where there is no family area and they just completely crush it and think, well, what's the point? I'm losing money, I'm having to constantly hop from IP to IP, and it's never going to stick. So I would say that it's not that bad because it would spread out the people in the park. And Beaver Creek wasn't just for kids, like it had rides and things that adults could enjoy. And the roller coasters do still bring adults. It's not like you're changing everything. Not to mention, I would like the Rugrats River ride to actually have theming. I do prefer the sort of Canadian wilderness type of theme that this had. The Rugrats River ride does only have really two main bits of theming. It has a little temple figurehead and also the Rugrats stood on a rock. And I think that they could really sort of enhance that and make it look better. And even in the little cave section, I think they maybe could have added something. And it is a short ride, albeit, but if they could bring sort of this sort of theming back with the charm and the nature, and I think I would be more engaged going round on it if it had this than if it had the Rugrats theming. Furthermore, I would wonder if they would bring back anything in the Space Invader building. Of course, they would have to route that around the big pizza underneath it and all the different areas that are actually put beneath the crater. I think they could definitely bring something back like Space Invader. Like, you have the popularity of things like Space Mountain, and indoor coasters are becoming this thing where people are wanting them more and more and more. And an indoor coaster for the Pleasure Beach would definitely set them above everything else because people are missing the indoor rides from things like Fort Park and Alton Towers. And I think that if Blackpool went, hey guys, we have an indoor coaster, no one else has that at the minute, and they're becoming ever popular, so get yourselves down here. We have a new family section, which does still feature some of the Nickelodeon Land rides, but they're just rethemed. I think they could do pretty well on that. I think loads of people would want to see a new indoor coaster, and I definitely think with the infrastructure of the park at the minute and how they are building it and how they can intertwine coasters without having to demolish anything, I think they could definitely make it happen. But my only concern for it is I wouldn't want this oversaturated colour and sort of old vibe to it, because now that sort of theming has been completely eradicated from the park. The park is now modern, it's sleek, and it's nice to look at. And I think that sort of pastel, like, sort of, oh, you could probably eat that sort of look, I think they need to change that up. And I do think it'd be a great investment for the park, and I think it'd give them so much leeway because an IP does mean that Nickelodeon can control what happens in the area. So if they did want an indoor coaster and Nickelodeon didn't want one because they didn't want to theme it with Nickelodeon or for whatever reason they wanted to say, probably Blackpool would not be able to do that unless they had structured the IP around that. But since it opened, the area actually hasn't changed at all. The rides are the same, the theming is the same, so you can tell that they do have some sort of control over it. And of course, it is halfway through the 2021 season, so really, I'm not too sure about that. So I suppose that's really all I have to say. They can always extend the IP so then they can make their own decision, and it might come in the 22 or 2023 season, but I'm not all too sure. So to finish up this video, if you do enjoy this sort of content, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do what you want. I'm really happy about how these videos have been going. I'll make sure to keep you posted with Blackpool Pleasure Beach content. I will hopefully be doing a room tour at the Boulevard at some point in the near future because I will be visiting the park, and I'll make sure to get you supplied with some of the newer content. So yeah, this is just talking. Bye bye.